there is a world in which, with some sort of brain-computer interface or new sort of AR overlay to the world, that we could see things that are completely imperceptible to humans today. Did we go weird enough?
That was superbly weird. I think that was probably the best prediction I've heard on this podcast. Welcome to Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. I'm Cameron Adams, co-founder and chief product officer of Canva, and I am on a mission to talk to AI leaders about how they're practically using AI to be more creative and amplify their teams. Today, we are joined by Allie K. Miller. Recently named to Time's list of the most influential people in AI, Allie has become one of the internet's most trusted voices on AI. Whether it's through her in-depth interviews or tutorials of the latest model. She advises leading companies like Novartis, Samsung, Salesforce, Google, Anthropic, and even OpenAI on AI. Previously, she built Amazon's multi-billion-dollar AI startup business and launched IBM's first multimodal AI team. When I sat down with Allie in December, we zeroed in on tactical AI ideas you can use today and some fascinating predictions on what's coming next. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. As a very, very loving Canva user, it's exciting to be here.
It is always great to have a loving Canva user on the show, and I am excited to have you share your wisdom with our listeners. But before we do that, we have one ask of you. This is the prompt. The prompt is where you'll draw something from your childhood that inspires you while you tell us the story about it. You get 90 seconds to talk and draw. Do you think you can multitask?
I'm a great multitasker. I'm a terrible artist, so let's see what I can do.
That's all right. We haven't had too many artists on the show, and it always turns out fine. So
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
Okay. I am an entrepreneur by heart. So when my sister and I were growing up, we decided to launch our very first business. It made zero money, but it was a postal service that ran only inside of our house. We called it Lick, Stick, and Send. Basically, we manually made our own envelopes because they were too expensive to purchase. And we would deliver mail essentially from our mother to our father and vice versa. Sometimes we would have them switch to the other side of the house just so we could deliver the mail more theatrically. It is probably the first company that I started, and I've done a couple more since. This is the glory that I have created for the Canva podcast.
I'm seeing boxes, I'm seeing envelopes. I think there is a lot to work with there. It's a brilliant sketch for the prompt, so don't worry.
Thank you very much. It's also, I want to draw your attention to the sealed with a kiss envelope. We are, very emotional mail senders. Whether you are sending a gift, it is always meant to be with love. So I'm pretty sure my sister and I hand drew every single lip mark on the back of these envelopes. I want to say that we delivered about 20 letters before we figured out that it's easier to talk to one another, but it was fun while it lasted.
Well, I love that story. I think it gives us the perfect insight into little Allie and what the future is going to be. We're going to send this picture to Tisha, our Canva designer in residence, who's going to team up with AI to whip it into something new. And we're going to reveal Allie, Tisha, and AI's creation at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for that. While Tisha works, let's go deep on AI with you, Allie. So early in your career, you actually led a 30-engineer team to develop IBM's first multimodal AI system. I would love to know what that system actually was and what you learned about combining inputs like computer vision, text, and conversational AI that still remain essential for today's creators.
My work at IBM Watson started in conversational AI. Then I ended up on the computer vision team running product development. We were working across, image classification and facial recognition. And this team was the first team to try and combine and merge these without it just being glued together tools. And what we were trying to do was create vertical specific multimodal AI. So within the financial space, within the healthcare space, what could we pull off when it comes to image plus language plus, maybe some even structured data? So it was the first attempt. It was messy. And again, at the time, the ability to vectorize things around us, i.e., the way to turn words into something a computer could understand, was so rudimentary. Like, just one example, I think we argued for a week as a team over how to deal with negations in a sentence. Like, this idea that you could tell an AI system, I am not allergic to strawberries, and that it would actually figure out whether you were allergic to strawberries was so difficult and so hard to manage back then. And of course, now that sounds like preschool. Like, that sounds like the easiest possible thing. But we were carving out, just the tiniest things that now are completely solved. I still wake up with acid reflux looking at how much AI has changed. We were building things that took 30 people that now I literally heard that same pitch from a 2-person startup doing it at higher quality. So just the pace of change the last couple of years, insane.
IBM's journey with AI to me is so fascinating because they were such an early adopter, but feels like they didn't quite cross the chasm that has resulted in companies like, OpenAI and Anthropic nowadays. And I really loved how they approached it with personality as well. Like, Watson was the first embodiment of technology as a real personality. How did you view that as you were developing systems inside IBM?
I think there were probably a few, personalities before that. I think IBM Watson was the first crazy mimetic one, just that Jeopardy moment. And even internal at IBM, if you go to one of the research facilities, they have that Jeopardy setup there that you can interact with and play with. That's how big that was, despite it being, in 2011, I think. It is such a big moment to have these big cultural spikes. I think ChatGPT was one. I think we're about to go through another one. But going through that, seeing that first multimodal team, I think the biggest thing that it gave me was an appreciation for how multimodal our experiences are, whether that's in personal life or work life. So if you're going to a concert, right? Like, yes, you're listening to the song itself, but you're also looking at the outfits of people around you. You're listening to the speech of the people next to you. You're taking a photo and texting it to someone. That's more metadata. There's a number of snack, setups and the price of the hot dog. All of these pieces are data that can help you, better optimize your concert if you're the provider of it, better optimize it if you're the audience member. And so it's made me really appreciate how just every single thing is data, and how our systems 10, 20 years ago were only really able to listen to or pay attention to a small segment of it. I think multimodal AI is just something that really excites me from an AI nerd angle, and also someone who loves to sing and loves photography and has appreciated how multimodal our creative and business experiences are. So I'm excited for everyone to get into multimodal AI. I'm glad that Watson was able to kind of kick some meme energy up, but the world is completely different now.
You just mentioned that ChatGPT was a huge paradigm shift, but that we're on the precipice of a new one. What is that new one?
So ChatGPT came out end of 2022 and was really a text chat platform. We saw it as an assistant. We saw it maybe sometimes as a co-pilot, but it was this down and back, purely text-based for the beginning. And most of what people were using it for, and honestly continue to use it for, is microtasking. It would be like asking it a quick question, hey, what are 5 words to describe a water bottle? It gives you back the answer. Or, hey, what are the top 10 AI tools for graphic design? And it gives you back the answer.
All 10 of them are Canva, of course.
100%. Yeah, no question. Evolution that we're going into is taking just that microtasking piece and moving it into a lot more action-oriented, goal-oriented, team-oriented, or systems-oriented AI work. So it's this idea that maybe AI is sitting as an ambient design partner in your brainstorming meetings or in your client reviews. Maybe it's AI functioning as a shared project management resource and is flagging budget considerations and worries proactively. We're seeing a lot of agentic browsers. Just as an example, I opened up an agentic browser and I did not open up Canva, but I typed into it and I said, go to my Canva profile. I want you to make me 2 designs. Both should be square. I want to post on Instagram and it should announce a meetup happening in New York at 5 p.m. at this location. That was a natural language prompt. And I know even inside of Canva, you can do natural language prompts as well. Yeah. But my hands were off the computer while an AI agent was literally navigating to the web to go to Canva and navigating the site for me. Now, I can also watch that and literally learn how to use a brand new tool, use a brand new app just by watching an agent navigate it. That is a completely different paradigm than where we were 3 years ago. And AI is also going to be able to work for longer.
Yeah, that is such a cool experience that you've just described. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what interacting with AI over long time periods is going to be like. 2025 Definitely. Was meant to be the year of agents. I don't think it's actually materialized that way, but we're starting to integrate them a bit more deeply. And you can definitely see a future where they are more of a pivotal part of your team.
Yeah, I think a lot of enterprises that I work with are using agentic workflows where they're still laying out each of the steps. But not a lot of companies are using really horizontal general agents where you feel like you can give it access to all of your documents and all of your finances and all private data and feel good about it. We're still seeing a lot of carve outs for specific tasks or specific roles and figuring out where agents can help. Even if it's narrow, they can still be helpful in taking action for repeated tasks. They're just not the everything machine that we are betting will come.
You've advised that AI first means burning things down and redesigning work from the very start. And that sounds great if you're a startup who's building everything from the ground up. But how do you do that for, say, a 50-year-old business that seems to be running fine right now?
It's so funny. So I've talked to companies that are 20 years old, over 100 years old. And as much as I want to believe that chatting with them and showing how things are changing really fast and how the pace of change is quickening and how if they just keep their current workflows, in 3 years, they'll be completely behind the ball. It is really hard to convince someone of that. And we've seen this, by the way, for the last several decades in marketing. There was a study of like, how do you get people to save more money for retirement in several decades if they're in their like 20s and 30s? And one of the things that they ended up doing was taking a photo of the person at age 20, 30 and morphing it into their 85-year-old self and then asking them, do you want to save for your retirement? And the people who were able to see their age self were a lot more likely to save. So how does that actually apply to AI and figuring out how to burn down those workflows? You kind of have to give people those alternate realities. Using AI to figure out some simulations to say, here's where it could turn wrong. Here is what it could look like if the cost of a query drops another 100x. Think about all the things you could do. And so using AI as a means to create these alternate realities and simulations can definitely help. The maybe hard truth after that is there will still be some people who say, I hate change. I don't want this. Please don't make me change what I've done for the last 30 years. And a lot of enterprises are realizing that the only way to gain traction is to kind of carve out like a lab or some sort of faster moving group that can be removed from some of the bureaucracy of the rest of the company and can function as that faster moving piece. Because if you're a company with 50,000 people, it is really hard and takes multiple years to make that culture shift. Even if the CEO declares loudly in an email, hey, we're AI first from here on out. We're going to require AI training. We're going to require in your 360 feedback that you talk about how you use AI. Change management among people still takes 2 to 3 years in the enterprise. So a lot of these large companies, whether they're 50 years old, 100 years old, are carving out these smaller groups. And even if you're a mid-market company, let's say you have 500 people and you're, very creative led and a lot of people are kind of, figuring out where they sit with AI, get them to test out the tools, work on literacy as a whole, but you still might want to carve out a group of 5 to 10 people to sprint a little bit faster so that the rest of your company is still aided. You don't want every single person at the company to wait and to revert to the slowest mover. You want to still be able to break through.
I feel like that separate organization, that separate R&D organization is a bit of a fallback mode for when you're presented with any innovation. I can think of a dozen research labs at big corporates that do really interesting work, but don't fundamentally change the organization itself. Xerox, Bell, they're all famous for producing incredible innovations, but the organizations themselves didn't move with the times. So I feel like it's almost setting yourself up for failure if you separate that innovative part of the organization and then just leave everyone else off to do the normal business.
I explicitly say that it's not an R&D group. So it's not meant to do research. It's meant to be held to business metrics. The term that I end up using more often than it's just lab is an easier word. I use the term frontier unit. There are other companies that use the term strike team, but it's still tying them to business metrics. It's still bringing in subject matter experts from different business lines. I think R&D is great. I think research groups should exist. But the one that I'm describing is very much trying to measure cost going in, revenue coming out, and a lot of other KPIs, maybe like employee morale, how fast they're able to, upgrade certain features, overall velocity. So it is very, very tied to KPIs.
Does it tie into something that you call the productivity trap of AI and how you develop things from scratch or whether you're augmenting things?
I think productivity is a trap, and I want to just kind of, asterisk caveat. Productivity is helpful and good, and a lot of really strong AI use cases drive productivity. But there are so many other things that AI can enable. Namely, it can enable you to do better work, and it can enable you to do new work that you weren't able to do before. And so what you have is a lot of mostly executives, maybe it's CMOs yelling at creative directors, and they're overly driven by squeezing, by productivity, by saying, hey, we want to still produce these 10, but we want to do it with fewer people. And I think that sort of mindset among an executive team can be really detrimental and toxic and poisonous for people below them. So a lot of, maybe that strike unit or frontier unit is thinking about how to create better work. Maybe you're measuring it on something like, sales conversion, or maybe you're doing targeted ads, but maybe you're having people rate it on how funny they found it. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be measured on quality. In the healthcare space, you can imagine diagnosis would be one. So there's a lot of quality measurements. And then the last is the ability to do brand new things. That's kind of why that frontier unit ends up being helpful. That burning down of workflows really does require a smaller team. It is very difficult to do that, even with 500 people. You kind of have to carve out maybe a technical person with a subject matter expert and have them have a dedicated, budget or group resource that they can use to be able to sprint on that. But productivity is a trap. I feel like we're somehow beyond that productivity only zone. And I think enterprises and mid-market are really waking up to other opportunities with AI.
As another way of driving organizational change, you also advocate for converting the fear of AI into a source of agency. So I'd love to know what's the fastest, lowest friction method you would recommend for someone who's scared of AI or they're unsure where to start, and how can you help them move from watching the future happen to actually taking control?
I have found that even if I sat in Madison Square Park in New York for 5 hours and just helped people with their AI questions, set up a booth, set up my laptop, and just sat there talking to strangers. And it was a fun test to see in the real world when people are very, very hesitant toward these tools. what is that aha moment and how do they get there? And as much as I would love to believe as a business person that it's solving all of their business woes and showing them how Claude or ChatGPT or whatever can create the most beautiful financial analysis of their life, what ends up driving the bigger mindset shift as a first step is something fun, is something creative. And what I usually default to is I ask them, or maybe it's their kid, what is a hobby? And so maybe it's someone being able to say, hey, I'm a single father. I have a 5-year-old son. He's obsessed with dinosaurs. Can you give me 5 ideas of things that I can cook that are dinosaur themed that'll be easy? And also we want to watch Lord of the Rings while it's happening. Like being able to show what a prompt could look like with context, showing that it's not just a Google search, but doing it in a creative lens, I think opens up people's minds to the breadth of AI use cases, to the type of interaction mode that they can use AI assistance versus something like a traditional Google search. So having that like little mini breakout moment is very important. After that, it is very much asking them what is annoying them in their work and trying to figure out how to solve these little mini annoyances to gain momentum. And then they can take on bigger, more complex tasks. But I would start creativity, then find and lean into the annoyance. And then that person, hopefully at that point, is so excited by what these tools can do that they will run off and build their own complex workflow. But those are the first 2 that I would start with.
I love that focus on fun. I've talked to so many people now about their journey in AI, and without a doubt, every time someone talks about interacting with AI with their kids or doing something fun and exciting in their personal life, that is when their eyes just light up, whether it's like telling crazy new stories or helping with scavenger hunts. Those creative moments are when people really see the power of AI.
I'll even throw in an extra use case. My friends and I created a game called ChatGPT Karaoke, where we have 2 bowls. Bowl 1 has song titles. Bowl 2 has random themes. And so you pull both out of a hat. We already have a pre-done prompt and a chat thread going. So you go to it and you say, okay, I need a song about tennis balls, but to the tune of, Don't Rain on My Parade. And then AI rewrites it, and then you have to perform it in front of the group. That's a hoot. And then just one other thought, which is a challenge toward people. I don't think they listen to this podcast because obviously people who listen to Canva, they're going to be pro AI, but there's still going to be some people who say, I don't even want to use it. And to those people, I say, please use it to prove to me that you hate it. Like, I challenge you to battle this system and to really try it. Often what happens is they just haven't had the opportunity to test these tools. They've been so hesitant. And so instead of framing it as work or instead of framing it as fun, framing it as like, I know you hate this, but let's like prove together that you hate this. Getting them to still experience that tool still ends up giving them that momentum. And those people still end up enjoying what they're doing, building up their creativity, creating net better work.
Is that something you've deployed in your personal moments? Because there's been times where I've definitely wanted to like just fire up ChatGPT and have a conversation with it as part of a group because we're talking about this topic and we want to know a fact or an approach or a philosophy on something. And sometimes I have just fired up voice mode and like chucked it on the table and we've started this conversation about it. But sometimes you're with an audience where that still feels a bit uncomfortable, like the social norms of AI aren't quite there yet and you don't know who's on board with it and who's going to react really badly to it.
I mean, we're definitely still figuring out as a society what the heck is going to happen. I think some people are going to be wearing necklaces that are recording audio 24/7, and some people are going to be extremely put off by that. There are some people who invite multiple AI assistants into their meetings, and there are some people that aren't okay with that. So even, when I'm interacting with a client, I'm always asking for upfront permission. And even if I'm recording, I'll still turn off the recording for the last couple minutes just to be able to have a more off-the-record conversation. What I will say is that human skills of human, listening and human empathy are still so important here. To know whether that necklace is going to put someone off and put them on, put their back to a wall, you have to be a really thoughtful human to think through that interaction to make sure that you haven't lost trust. So whether you're an enterprise building AI products that you're releasing, whether it's an internal team and you're trying to figure out how to bring AI into a brainstorm, as a manager, as an executive, as a leader, you still have to meet people where they are, and you can't move so fast that you end up breaking the team.
Let's get a little AI tactical for a moment. So
Yeah.
you've suggested this really powerful prompt structure that people should try out when they're hitting a block. I think it's something along the lines of, I'm a blank who's trying to blank. Can you walk us through how people might be able to use that structure, and also some of the critical steps that they should make sure that they bury in there?
So if you're newer to prompting and getting these longer outputs and you're used to just kind of these small micro tasks, I would advocate for this sort of prompt structure, which is, I'm a 50-year-old woman learning how to draw. So that is your statement. It's your context of who you are and the task that you're trying to accomplish. Then I would kind of break it out into subtasks. I want to not only learn how to draw, but I want to learn specifically how to use pastels and how to draw envelopes with Sharpies, right? So I got a little bit more specific on the task. Then I would want to give it maybe some extra goals or fears. Like, I'm worried that I'll never be able to draw hands very well. I took one class in drawing when I was 8 years old. So again, giving it a little bit more context. And I know I gave just 2 lines there. There are some times where I dictate for 20 minutes about context of a specific client problem or a conference that I just attended, or, a topic. If I'm trying to think through something really complex in AI, I might dictate for a lot longer. But for now, a couple lines is going to be even better. Again, you're just trying to alter the knowledge space that it's operating in and just get it to niche down a little bit more into you. And then I would also give it resources. I can spend up to $1,000 to learn how to draw. I can spend, that on paint and tools and all in. You might want to give it constraints. Hey, I want to learn in less than 3 years. Ideally, I would spend less than $200. And I don't want to have to travel for any drawing class. I want to do it all from home. So I'm describing myself, the context of the moment, the goals. I'm breaking down the goals into tasks. I'm providing resources and constraints. And even just if I checked off that and I provided that as a prompt, instead of saying, help me learn to draw, right? You can immediately see why those 2 prompts are going to give you such different responses, and how that longer one is going to be much more tailored to me, which means I'm much more likely to take action, which means I'm much more likely to live the life that I want to lead. I think that is the type of prompt that works for traditional AI asks, particularly ones that are knowledge-based or generative-based. Like if you're trying to get an infographic back or a client document, proposal sort of thing back. If you're prompting an agent and you're trying to get an agent to do something, that prompt would look a little bit different. But for more traditional prompting, that's the structure I would use.
You noted that, giving AI context is really important. And I imagine you don't mind how messy it is. You can have run-on sentences, don't worry about commas or em dashes or whatever. How radical do you get with giving context, though? Are you one of those people who advocates for piping their entire life into their AI assistant? Emails, docs, calendars, everything? Or do you have to be a bit more circumspect?
Within the realm and guardrails of being safe and responsible with what sort of data I'm putting in, I am connecting a lot. We use a lot of the native integrations inside of ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini to be able to connect it into, say, our Google Drive or Google Docs. Google Calendar is a really big one, so that if we are going to ask for some sort of calendar-related ask, I can say, go ahead and access my calendar and then answer this. Or go ahead and access the newsletter template for clients and then build this, so that I don't have to prompt with a crazy level of detail each time. So I'm often pulling context for describing tasks. I also just love a good dictation rant. Like, there's something so incredible about how generative AI and all these tools are allowing us to get away from our computer. The idea that I can go on a 45-minute walk in New York and dictate the nuances and details and all the stuff about a problem that I'm facing. And, maybe it's a difficult conversation that I have to have with, my friend. And here's all the context about our relationship and how I'm thinking about it. And this person is offended when I ask this. It is so helpful to be able to share that context. Research shows that it's not always that more context helps or less context, but at the very least, getting to a level of specificity and always testing. So I'm testing connecting it into certain documents. I'm testing shorter prompts versus longer prompts. This is always very iterative. And then my last tip, because I know a lot of folks are like very tactile and they're probably drawing a lot and writing a lot. I am so often taking photos of the messy Post-its that are all over my desk and throwing it in and just doing an end of day photo, upload it in. And I go, can you make sense of what on earth happened today? Or can you pull out 3 big themes and turn it into a tweet that I can share? Or can you figure out what is missing from these sorts of notes and what gaps I might not be thinking about? So I am like constantly context hunting. Just yesterday I was at a conference. I was taking photos of some slides. I took those slides and put it into context for a new chat thread. So everything around you is context. Your meeting transcripts, that's context. Documents, context. The 5 different versions of a campaign, context. Figuring out when to use what context is a little bit of trial and error. But at the very least, gathering the context and having it so that you can work with it, that's huge.
I love that little tip of just taking photos of all the stuff through the day and uploading it and getting it to figure it out. Micro question. When you go on a 45-minute rant walk, do you just hit the little microphone on your assistant and talk to it? Or do you record it into a voice note? Because I've done a 20-minute rant thing and at the end of it, I'm like, cool, I'm done. And then the AI is like, sorry, what did you just say? And I just lost the last 20 minutes.
Like heartbreak. There is nothing worse. So I tend to dictate into Otter, which allows me to dictate for even an hour. And because it's doing live transcription, even if I get a call in the middle and answer it and go back, it'll still keep recording and pick up where it left off. It allows me to pause. So I use Otter. There are other tools out there. That allows me to go uninterrupted. And then I'll copy that and throw it very often into ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. If it's something that I've spent an hour talking about, why would I not want to optimize whatever the heck I wanted to do with it, right? That is a signal to me that whatever that task is, maybe I'm laying out, our marketing strategy for the next year, or I'm figuring out the job description for a filmmaker that I want to hire. That is an important enough task to carve out an hour of my day. It better be an important enough task to use 3 different platforms to be able to compare those answers and battle them off of each other.
Those are some great tips there. I'm loving all these practical knowledge bombs that you're dropping. You have talked to thousands of people who use AI in really wildly different ways. And I know that you view AI as a tool that can radically empower women in particular. So I would love to know, what ways have you seen women really taking the lead in AI adoption?
I just went on the Mel Robbins podcast, and the number of DMs that I got after that of particularly women entrepreneurs telling me how they're using AI, I was just thrilled. And I know, everyone can do this. This is not just women, but there was a woman who messaged me. She goes, I just listened to your Mel Robbins podcast. I'm a 53-year-old business owner. I just used AI to redo my website, finally figure out what SEO is, optimize the whole thing for SEO and keywords. And then she wrote, boom, pow. And I did it with zero coding background and for $0. And that was the message that she sent me. And I've heard this story hundreds of times of people realizing that, maybe Google Merchant is not a thing that you're used to. AI can explain to you step by step how to do it. You can have an agentic browser walk you through all of those tasks. You can have 5 different YouTube links for explainer videos that tell you how to do it. And you throw them all into Notebook LM. And then you can ask that notebook any single question. Every single wall that we used to have, maybe because your friends weren't business owners like you are, maybe your network that you built up was not one of entrepreneurs, but was one of, nurses or something like that. Just maybe you went through a career pivot at some point. This idea that you can sustain a career pivot, and even if you don't have this 200-person network of professionals in your same industry, that you can still tap into the world's expertise with AI systems that are connected to the internet, that allow you to bring in other contexts. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. It used to be that only people that were willing or able to slave away for days to crack how to list something on Etsy or whatever it is could figure it out. No, it is democratized. Entrepreneurship is democratized. And so there's going to be other points of friction, but certainly getting your website up is not one anymore.
You also shared the story of a woman who built a Mahjong app as a non-coder using AI. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and just why it resonated so much for you?
Yeah, I think I loved this one. One, because it had such a strong visual component. Like a lot of these mini AI apps that even I've built for myself, they don't have like a lot of visuals and images and video. For the most part, it's like a text-based thing. Maybe it's a special to-do list app or something with spreadsheets. But the reason that I loved this one, she has no coding background, has not worked in tech. She wanted to be able to like join this Mahjong group. They move very fast. She wanted to, ease into it. And so she built her own Mahjong app to teach herself what each of the tiles meant, what each of the combinations were of different hands that you can do. And while she was on subway rides in New York, she turned her commute into learning time with an app that she built. Yes, it's like fun and amazing that she did that. I think what really excites me though is that app would not have been built. Like that app doesn't have $1 billion VC backing behind it. It's a super customized Mahjong tutorial app. So there wouldn't have been a business model to support that, right? Like our VC world 15 years ago, it just didn't mean that app existed. Now all these weird apps that VCs would never care about can exist. That is what's really exciting. Like I've built a custom to-do list app that takes all of my tasks. And then if I keep clicking, break it down, it'll break down each task, like down to the just atom level. So if I say like, I have to book a podcast studio in San Francisco, I don't know how to do that. And then I'll click the break it down button and it'll say like, go online and search podcast studios in San Francisco. And then if you click break it down again, it's like, go online and open a browser. And then if you click break it down again, it's like, walk to your chair at your desk. And so it's so like, I have no excuses to not take action toward a thing that I want to do.
That one doesn't sound like a niche app. That sounds like the next $1 billion idea.
Okay. I'll start building it right after this.
It is extremely easy to get an idea up and to create that Mahjong app that you sit on the subway and listen to. But to me, there still seems a huge gap for people between even thinking about doing that. Like, I should go and create an app that helps me with this specific thing in my life and it will, push me forward years. How do you get people to embrace that mindset? Like, what's the critical thing that people need to do to take that small but giant leap?
So tool-wise, you can do this with a couple tools. You can do it with Claude Artifacts and Claude Code. You could do it with Lovable, Replit. There are a lot of these apps like Canva that allow you to make little fun mini apps. After you've picked a tool that you like, I would just start with something, again, fun. Like, don't go for utility first, because once you go down the rabbit hole of utility, you're going to want to spend hours and hours making it perfect. One example app that a lot of folks can build is like a bedtime story generator for you and your kid, where you can fill out different form fills. It'll generate a bedtime story with your kid's name and maybe some of their hobbies. And that can be a fun starter. Maybe it's a family navigation app. A guy was showing me that he built an app called Family OS, and it took his Google Drive and Gmail and Google Calendar, and every single day it would update and show him his family's schedule that day and what he had to be aware of in the coming week. That's a little bit more utility. But any sort of just fun, like, what game do you wish you could have been playing in line while you're waiting for SNL tickets? Like, thinking about what you wish you could have and then just asking AI, not necessarily to build it, but just what would it look like to have a game that is based on unicorns flying through Mars, and to first have that conversation. And then you can say, okay, build that for me. And then you still get to have that taste and curation and figuring out what color you want the unicorns to be and whether you want it to be a horror film or a comedy looking thing. That's where it starts to still be fun. But yeah, just start with maybe a conversation and then go into the app building. That could be one spot.
The obvious application for unlocks like this is in business. And I think we're starting to see a reshaping of business, particularly around team size and almost having teams of one. You're actually a solopreneur leading an organization called Open Machine. And I think you are a compelling case study in running an AI first business with a very lean team. So what daily tasks are you now able to delegate to AI that allows you to be a team of one and to achieve scale and impact really disproportionate to your scale?
So there are startups that are now making millions of dollars per head. I absolutely agree with you that the scale of business and what people are able to create as small teams is changing. I have a small but nimble team, and we are using AI in nearly everything we do. I think a hack that I love is taking inputs that already exist and then turning it into things that we need. So if the meeting was already being recorded and we have this meeting transcript, what can that automatically give us as additional value? So clearly we can send a summary to a client and action items back to our team. We can have some sort of project management thing that's tracking all these tasks. Those feel like obvious wins from the meeting transcript. But what I love doing is thinking about what are brand new use cases that could not have been done 10 years ago with that meeting transcript. One example could be figuring out, how to store all those meeting transcripts for one client. So let's say that I'm talking to the pencil company and I can ask any of these AI tools. I can say, hey, go and find the last 25 meeting transcripts with the pencil company. Tell me whether I've become more impactful within that company. Tell me whether the executives seem to be more bought in than they were. Graph their, excitement over time. Graph their AI impact over time. Graph their fear of AI over time. That sounds like such a weird thing, like weird data to get back. But we did not have access to that, or it was too expensive to do that, too manual to do that. A human would have to read through 25 transcripts to be able to get that done. But now with one prompt, you can get that back. So we're taking these inputs, again, meeting transcript being one, these rant walks, I'll go on a 45-minute walk and dictate 20 different tasks that I have to do and maybe details of emails. And then I'll give it to Claude and it will draft out all those emails separately. We have pre-built workflows that pre-draft all of the responses to our customer support emails so that customer support takes, less than an hour a day instead of multiple hours per day. There are a lot of just these workflows that we've built out that have made our team a lot more productive, yes, but also allowed us to create new things we couldn't do before and create better work for my audience, for our clients. I mean, we're using it everywhere. It's like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's very hard to think of a place that we're not using it.
Well, it really highlights, I think, the shift from people as executors of tasks into managers and orchestrators. And I think it signals a real shift for managers and their role in managing both people and potentially hundreds or thousands of AI agents. And I think it speaks to a bundle of new skills that we're going to have to develop as we go into the future. Do you have a particular perspective on what we need to build as leaders?
Do you think we're going to manage hundreds of agents? Like, do you think a manager is going to have 100 agent reports?
I think it might be under the hood. It gets farmed out to hundreds, thousands.
Yeah.
What the actual interface with an AI team looks like, I think still needs to be developed. It could be 3 or 4 people of different specialty areas like marketing or design or engineering that you talk to, and they then go and talk to their agents or sub-agents, as you call them. But I think at the moment, if you wanted to operate at scale, you would probably literally need to talk to hundreds of AI agents.
Yeah.
Let's see where the tools go.
Yeah, I think that feels right to me. And I think, just as an example, Claude Code, which, is one of these coding tools where you can spin up different terminals on your computer. And I can fire off 8 different agent tasks all at once. And I can go back to task 2 and check on it, and go back to task 5 and check on it. And maybe task 6 was reorganizing my photos folder, but task 1 was reviewing all my contracts and updating our NDA. And maybe task 3 was figuring out this coding problem. All of those can be running at once. I think I have a hard time imagining that we're going to somehow give our people managers like 1,000 more direct reports and they have to memorize, R2D2 looking names. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of reorienting toward systems of work where a manager might have some direct reports that are AI operators now that are really focused on managing these AI systems. I definitely think we're going to have more multi-threaded work. That Claude Code example with 8 terminals is just one example. But I think that'll be happening. I think it'll probably be hybrid, that there'll be some that are AI employees that function as teammates, which we already see now, like people calling Codex or Claude Code or Canva inside of Slack and acting as a teammate in that moment. And then I think that there will be just little mini micro tasks that kind of get fired out. The other way of thinking about this, which is very early to brainstorm about what it could look like, is Claude skills, or the ability to have this sort of quiver filled with a bunch of different capabilities where you are teaching the AI system these different capabilities. And then in the moment, you ask it to complete a task for you, and it first figures out which skill it should use, or if it needs to build its own skill to be able to complete that, or if it can't complete the task at all and it can't build its own skill. There's a world in which that is actually what we're building. We're building out capabilities for agents and not the agents themselves. It's very early right now, but I think 2026 will probably give us a good signal of where that's headed.
Maybe the skill here is hypertasking, because you can now kick off, as you said, like 20 different streams of work in the course of a minute. All your helpers can go off and do the work and then come back with the results of that. But it still takes you time to consume the results, to read the research that they've done, read the document they've put together, try out the prototype that they just coded. And I have found myself often forgetting about things that I asked for because I've dived deep onto the first result that returned and totally forgot about this piece of research that I actually asked AI to do. And like keeping yourself on task, keeping all those threads going and then working it into the bigger picture, to me seems like something we all need to get better at.
I meet with, executives and leaders at a lot of the AI labs, and one of them told me that the really successful people with agents and skills and everything we're talking about, they tend to have multi-threaded brains. And I was talking to friends and asking followers, what type of people have really strong multi-threaded brains? And they were talking about project managers, that they have to keep all of these things in their heads at once. They were talking about parents with a lot of children, that you have to manage a very complex household. They were talking about people who grew up with a lot of siblings and have always had to manage 5 different conversations at the dinner table. Like, I love thinking about what types of people have been naturally groomed for this multi-threadedness without realizing it. I think people with like ADHD are actually at a pretty strong advantage in the AI age because we can manage all these tasks. I think we're also going to see more proactive systems. So maybe you'll fire off these 5 and the AI systems will come back to you and kind of check in and make sure that you saw and course corrected their work. And then maybe on that last one, just how long it takes to review. I completely agree. I think a lot of people are giving AI tasks that they could have completed in an hour, let's say, and then AI completes it in a half hour, but then it takes you an hour to edit it anyways. And so it didn't really save you that much time. I would either advocate for tasks that are not like that actually save you time or at least improve the quality of the work, or only go after those tasks if you believe that a couple iterations will speed it up.
I would love to talk about creativity for a second, because this podcast is about creativity and the creative spark that AI can bring to it. You've talked about forking creative outputs like video and code. What does forking mean?
So it's this idea where you can take one input and get multi-output. So let's say that I went on one of those rant walks where I talk to an AI system for 45 minutes and I take that big input and I put it into an AI system and I go back and forth with it until I feel like I have the right input artifact, whatever that thing is. Maybe, again, it's like a grant proposal, 5-page thing. I can then take that and fork it out into an AI avatar video, a sales pitch deck, a interactive dashboard, a micro app that I can, turn into a game. This idea that you can take one input and get multiple outputs is really important. And as it's going into each of those outputs needs a little something different. If I'm prompting for a video, I'm going to have to give style of video. Do I want it to be a close-up or a far-away shot? Do I want it to be dramatic? And do I want it to feel like it's, the movie The Martian? Or do I want it to feel like it's, Little Miss Sunshine or The Grinch? Like, what do I want as a style? So along those forking paths, you're going to have to add a little bit more prompting, a little bit more detail on the task. But the big uplift that you're going to get is by going from that one big input into multi-outputs. And you have enterprises doing this too. Like UBS is one of the big examples where they already had these research reports that they were creating, and they were making 50,000 reports and only 1,000 videos a year. But because of AI and AI writing the scripts and AI avatar videos and avatar voices, they're able to use these systems to now generate 5,000 videos. That is a 5x gain on video generation. It required new skill building. It required new assets. It required these analysts going in to film themselves. But it was going from one input to extending out their output and impact.
As the systems get better and better, though, as they gain more context, as they understand what we're looking for with all of those different outputs, surely they will begin to know what's needed, like what different formats are needed, what's going to resonate on LinkedIn versus Instagram, and it will proactively start presenting these things to you. So what then is the role of humans in the creative process? If we accelerate that 5 years into the future and it's anticipating our needs for what this piece of creative should look like, what are we doing?
First, I want to be mean to the AI systems of today that when you ask it to write a cold email for you, the actual copy that it gives you back is utter trash. You have to prompt it so much back and forth to be able to make it sound like a real human that is working on building trust and not just speaking from their own point of view and what they stand to gain. So first, I want to say, like, we're not past that point at all. There are gains in these models. Like, even now, I felt like 2 years ago, if I asked a model to copy my tone and style and structure of writing, maybe 2 years ago, it was at 60%. A year ago, it was at 70%. And then more recent models, Claude Opus 4.5 being the best one that I use right now, it's probably, I said it was somewhere between 85 and 93%. Still not 100. I'm still making edits, but it is a lot better. I think we're already starting to see skills where you can give it your brand guidelines. And at the very least, you can have AI do this sort of QA, right? Like, is my logo in the right place? Have I used the right hex code for these, new brand colors since our refresh? Have I, written the right copyright in the right place? That can be done in a skill, but a lot of that taste and curation is even more important today. Bringing in that expertise is even more important today. I think in 5 years, all of those tasks will probably be easier. The floor will be raised, the ceiling will be raised on what people are going to accomplish. And I think you'll see much smaller teams build out entire multimodal global campaigns in a way that now it's not even that they are pulling it off with 1,000 people. It's that they're not pulling it off, right? Like, we're going to be able to have mass extensibility of brands and I think hyper-personalization gets a bad rap, but hyper-relevance at scale, giving every single person what they need at the right point, that's where I think that scale could go. So you're still going to have that master prompt, whether it's in brand guidelines, but being able to figure out how to then get a million different versions of it. We have not yet seen what the user interface of that could be. We've seen platforms give us 100 different versions of something, or, a couple hundred if it's translations. But at least to my eyeballs, I have not seen the, ideal interface for building millions of versions of something.
We have gone everywhere from the tactical to the strategic, and I feel like I could ask you 5 million more questions, but I've only got time for one more. 10 years ahead, beyond the proliferation of AI agents and everything that we're forecasting today, what is one non-obvious societal shift that you foresee? Something on the scale of talking to pets or the collapse of the 5-day work week. What are you fundamentally thinking AI is going to change with the world?
It is impossible to predict things in AI. I want to declare that. So whatever I predict, I am giving myself the grace of being very wrong. One, I really do think we are going to talk to pets. And the reason that that's actually an important one to call out is because going way back to the beginning of the independent study that I ran in college, the reason that was so exciting is because you can multimodalify everything. If I can gather enough data and I can show enough examples and I can do that between Spanish and English, then we can have systems that are inherently going to be able to learn. We're going to have these emerging translations between maybe English and dog noises. I'm going to go one step further, and maybe this is not in 10, but maybe it's in a couple decades. Go with me for a second because I'm going to go weird with this. But
all right, let's go.
I use a lot of VR. I don't know if you're like me, but I love playing VR games. There is a world in which we multimodalify everything, and something way cooler than the Meta Ray-Bans today allows us to see and perceive things that we cannot see and perceive today. So I think 10 years ago or something, there was a gentleman who was colorblind who created him, he turned himself into the world's first cyborg. Have you ever seen this? He
Yes.
did some sort of brain-computer interface so that a sound or a frequency was playing, depending on what color he was seeing. And he was able to retrain his brain to see things that he literally could not see from birth. I think there is a world in which, with some sort of brain-computer interface or new sort of AR overlay to the world, that we could see things that are completely imperceptible to humans today. Like maybe you have a heat tracker and a facial recognition system and the ability to see how solid the ground is that you're walking on and the ability to see the air pressure around you and the color that you're looking at and the emotion of the people around you. Like there is a world where we go from the colors that we can see in the peripheral vision that we can see in a 3D only on Earth plane to such big advancements in AI native interfaces and multimodal work and world models that are multimodal that we could perceive more than we've ever perceived as humans. Was that weird enough? Did we go weird enough?
That was superbly weird. I think you've got a future career as a futurist. That was probably the best prediction I've heard on this podcast. So thank you for that.
Well, I hope it comes true. That's the other hope. I can put these out into the universe, but I did just try the Meta Ray-Bans, and for now I can direct you on which street to walk on, but eventually we'll get to my dream.
Okay, I think Tisha has had enough time to feed your sketch into AI and work with it a bit. So let's bring her back to see the final results of this human AI, human creative triangle. Tisha, you there?
Yes, I decided to turn your memory into kind of like a vintage ad. I feel like it honors that memory, kind of like having that playful and warm theme to it, while kind of like making it your first official stepping stone as kind of like an entrepreneur.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. See, even vintage, I wouldn't have even thought of it.
Introducing Lick, Stick and Send. Founded by two sisters with big ideas and very small margins, Lick, Stick and Send specialized in handcrafted envelopes, careful delivery, and dramatic cross-house logistics. Mail was routed from mother to father, father to mother, sometimes requiring a full change of rooms, simply for the thrill of delivery.
Oh my God.
There were no profits, no investors, just heart, hustle, and a fascination with how things move.
Oh, I love it.
Lick, Stick and Send. A business
Yeah.
Even create a new brand for her. Allie, you need to revisit this idea.
I made a logo at the end so that it makes it look more official.
Obsessed. This is going to be the resurgence of Lick, Stick and Send. Thank you. My family's like group chat is going to love that.
I'm glad you love it.
Thank you. Thank you for adding the much needed human touch.
Well, listeners, if you want to see Tisha's amazing vintage recreation of Allie's memory, and you really should, just click the link in the show notes. And that's it. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for diving deep with me on AI First Reinvention and Mahjong, Allie. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. To keep up with future episodes, please subscribe wherever you love to listen to podcasts or head on over to YouTube. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating or a review. We read every single one, and we always love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, keep chasing that creative spark.